The nations where you can travel without a vaccination. The countries that permit travel without vaccinations are listed below. Where can I travel unvaccinated? Several nations presently permit travelers without the necessary vaccinations to enter. Some of them are in Europe, while some are a little bit farther away. We advise always carefully adhering to UK medical advice, which includes receiving your COVID vaccine and booster shot if you are able to. You should always research government regulations before traveling, both for the country you might be considering visiting and for the UK after you get back. The complete list of nations where travelers are permitted to enter without a vaccination is shown below. One. Egypt. Before entering Egypt, all visitors must fill out a declaration form. Travelers who have not received vaccinations must present either a negative PCR test that was performed no more than 72 hours prior to arrival in Egypt or a positive fast antigen test. COVID-19 recovery documentation won't be accepted. To 2. South Africa. Visitors to South Africa are required to show documentation of a negative PCR test performed no more than 72 hours before arrival. On arrival, you might be screened. Three. Dubai and United Arab Emirates. A complete vaccination record is not required to travel to the UAE. Arrivals who are unvaccinated must show proof of a negative PCR test conducted 48 hours before to departure. Travelers from the UK to Dubai who are unvaccinated might need to undergo a COVID-19 PCR test when they arrive. 4. Turkey. Turkey does not require that you have received all of your recommended vaccinations, but you must be able to provide documentation of a negative PCR test taken no later than 72 hours prior to entry, a negative rapid antigen test taken no later than 48 hours prior to entry, or documentation of a recent recovery from COVID-19 within the previous 6 months. Arrivals must also present an online form that was filled out 72 hours prior to departure, and they will be examined for coronavirus symptoms, including temperature checks. Random PCR testing may be conducted on arrivals. Anytime you are in an airport or during any flight into or out of Turkey, you must always wear a face mask. 5. Sweden. UK visitors to Sweden will no longer need to show confirmation of vaccination or a negative COVID-19 test as of Friday, April 1, 2022. Six. Ireland. As of Sunday, March 6, 2022, you do not need to present any documentation in support of your immunizations, recuperation, negative test results, or passenger location form in order to enter Ireland. 7. Mexico. Currently, Mexico does not require tourists to undergo quarantine or a negative PCR test. before entering the country. Additionally, resorts have the right to ask visitors to complete a health questionnaire upon arrival. Bahamas. Unvaccinated travelers 12 years of age and older must present the results of a PCR test that was performed no more than 72 hours before their arrival in the Bahamas. Any visitor, regardless of age, must fill out an application for a Bahamas travel health visa trip. Children under the age of 17 must be listed in a parent or guardian's profile. Luxembourg. Before taking off, all visitors to Luxembourg must complete a passenger location form. Non-immunized individuals must present evidence of a negative PCR test conducted no more than 48 hours before to their trip or a negative lateral flow test conducted no more than 24 hours prior. If you have tested positive for COVID within the past year but are not fully immunized, you can submit documentation of your recovery to be admitted to Norway. As a result of the lifting of the entry-level travel restrictions entering Norway, the pre-pandemic regulations currently prevail. Seychelles. Regardless of their vaccination status, travelers can enter Seychelles as long as they can show a negative PCR test from within 72 hours of their departure or a fast antigen test from within 24 hours. Travelers must remain in accommodations that have been approved, but quarantining is not necessary upon arrival. Slovenia. Travelers from the UK who are unvaccinated must fill out a digital passenger locator form in order to enter Slovenia. However, they are not required to present documentation of a negative test or vaccine. France. For entry into France, if you are unvaccinated and over 12, you must present a negative PCR test result obtained within 72 hours or an antigen test result obtained within 48 hours prior to departure. 14. Croatia. No vaccination record or test result is required for those who are not immunized to enter Croatia. Additionally, gone is the need to complete a passenger location form. 15. Italy. Unvaccinated travelers coming into Italy from the UK must present results of a PCR test that was completed within 48 hours before to entry or a lateral flow test that was completed within 48 hours prior to entry. There is no longer a need to complete a passenger location form. 16. Iceland. On February 25, 2022, all COVID restrictions including domestic regulations were lifted. Therefore, you can enter the country without taking a test or providing documentation of your immunization status. Monaco. You do not need to give proof of vaccination to enter Monaco. However, adults over 16 who are not fully protected must either present a document attesting to their recovery from COVID-19 or a negative PCR or antigen test result from within the previous 24 hours, a positive PCR or antigen test taken more than 11 days before arrival and within the last 6 months. 18. Sri Lanka. All visitors must have COVID travel insurance, and unvaccinated travelers must provide documentation of a negative PCR test conducted no more than 72 hours prior to their trip, or a negative lateral flow test conducted no more than 48 hours prior. Cell swab tests are not acceptable. 19. Maldives. A traveler declaration form must be completed by every visitor to the Maldives 72 hours prior to departure. Regardless of immunization history, a PCR test is no longer necessary. 20. Cape Verde. You do not need to have received all of your vaccinations to enter Cape Verde, but you will need to show proof that you are COVID-free when you check in for your flight to the country, such as a negative PCR test obtained 72 hours prior to travel or a positive lateral flow test obtained 48 hours prior. Costa Rica. There are no longer any coronavirus-related criteria for entrance into Costa Rica as of 1 April 2022. The government does acknowledge that they could be quickly brought back, so travelers should constantly verify the advice before their trip. 22. Cuba. Travelers from the UK are no longer required to present proof of COVID vaccination or COVID test results in order to enter Cuba as of 6 April 2022. Random testing is still done at airports, though, and anyone who tests positive will be relocated to quarantine at their own expense at a certified government health facility. 23. Greece. Since May 1, 2022, visitors who have not received vaccinations are permitted to enter the nation without a negative PCR or fast antigen test result. Additionally, passenger locator forms are no longer necessary. However, it can be necessary for new arrivals to go through a quick COVID test. You, and anyone traveling with you, must remain alone for at least 5 days, either at home or in a hotel. If you test positive when you arrive in Greece, this will be paid for by the Greek state. You may be released from quarantine on day 5 if you don't exhibit any symptoms. Cyprus. Unvaccinated visitors to Cyprus must show documentation of a negative PCR test conducted within 72 hours of departure or an antigen test conducted within 24 hours of departure. Upon arriving at the airports in Larnaca or Paphos, passengers over 12 years old may then be required to submit to a second PCR test and wait in isolation for the results. This should take roughly 3 hours. This must be purchased by the traveler and costs between €15 and €19. 25. Spain. Adults who are not immunized are permitted entry into Spain if they can provide documentation of a test that came back negative before doing so. Spain used to only allow fully immunized visitors from the UK to enter the country. However, the country has recently loosened its regulations and will now accept negative PCR tests conducted 72 hours prior to departure for the country or negative antigen tests conducted 24 hours prior to departure for the country in place of full immunization in adult. But those who can't fit either requirement won't be allowed in. To be considered completely vaccinated as of February 1st, you must have received your Second shot between 14 and 270 days prior to travel to Spain and the Canary Islands. No vaccination documentation is required for children aged 12 to 17, however they must have a negative PCR test in order to enter. The 26. Portugal and Madeira. Travelers without a vaccination are permitted to visit the mainland of Portugal and the island of Madeira as long as they can demonstrate their coronavirus-free status upon entry. You must submit a traveler questionnaire before leaving for Portugal and show documentation of a negative PCR test performed within 72 hours or an antigen test performed within 24 hours in order to reach the country's mainland. Tests that are self-administered are not accepted. On arrival, your temperature will also be checked. You must sign up for the Madeira Safe Travelers platform in order to enter Madeira, and you must download a QR code to show airport employees when you arrive. You must show documentation of a negative antigen test performed by a qualified healthcare provider within 48 hours of leaving. If you cannot present one of these documents when you check in for your flight, your airline may refuse boarding. Before you travel, check with your airline